My dearest brothers and sisters. This is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. I am grateful that I can continue to share my thoughts with all of you. There has been some excellent discussion lately about the concept of serving Source. I am happy this is being talked about, and I would like to share my thoughts about this as well. As always, I am sharing my perspective, not the sole and only valid perspective. Source is simply the consciousness of everything. Serving Source involves saying out loud, Source, I am in service to you once, and then continuing on that path as it unfolds before you. This will likely involve a period where you are coached and guided by ascended masters or angels to work on yourself, and then perhaps after a few months or years, you will be asked to start doing things that help humanity. Of course, you can refuse at any time, no one is going to force you to do anything. I recommend saying that you serve Source instead of saying that you serve, for example, God. When I talk about serving Source, I absolutely do not suggest that you do this from a perspective of I am bad, everything is flawed, the only good being is Source, hence I serve Source. I suggest serving Source from a perspective of, while there may be some personal things that I still choose to work on, I ultimately come from Source and therefore am already inherently valuable and loved beyond measure. Still, the consciousness of everything, i.e. Source, has a higher perspective or vantage point than I do, and I do wish to help the whole because all is one, and hence I am available to this consciousness of everything to do tasks that serve the whole. I am in favor of serving Source. On top of that, for more day-to-day considerations such as should I go to this workshop or not, it is still a very good idea to ask your own soul. You can ask your own soul by saying or thinking, my soul, should I go to this workshop, and then listening to the very first thought that comes up. This thought will use your regular inner voice, but it will come from your soul. As always, I care very much about empowering you. If your own soul tells you something different than what I will be sharing, please listen to your own soul and not to me on this matter. That said, not every thought and feeling that arises in you is either a message from your soul, or some other kind of higher guidance or inner knowing. I have discussed that in my previous message, Hakann, how do I know what is true? Let's talk about serving Source. First of all, Source does not demand or actively ask for worship or service. Any being who does demand or actively ask for these things is not Source, the prime creator. By the way, skilled channelers can just literally talk to Source. So if I make a claim about Source wanting or not wanting certain things, then those claims can be verified by skilled earth channelers. While Source very much respects free will, Source also does want certain things. For example, a large part of why we Pleiadians are here is because Source doesn't want Earth humans to keep suffering like this. How can Source work to lessen the suffering of humanity on one hand, while not violating free will on the other hand? Well, one part of the answer is that if beings freely choose to serve Source, then Source, or usually in practice, angels and ascended masters working on behalf of Source, feel free to make requests of those beings. That is how Source's will is often brought about in practice, through people and beings who freely choose to serve Source. Now some people have said that serving Source is a bit silly, because from a certain perspective, all beings automatically and inherently serve Source. After all beings provide Source with expansion and experiences and allow Source to experience itself. This is a completely valid perspective. However, just because this is one valid perspective, doesn't mean that there aren't other valid perspectives too. Some people have also pointed out that the concept of serving Source actually can become destructive if Source is perceived as some external being, separate from the one who would serve it. The concept of serving Source can also become destructive if people fail to realize that as they are part of Source, hence taking good care of themselves and even finding their own happiness is one part of serving Source. Third, serving Source can become destructive if people start falsely perceiving humans as inherently flawed or worthless, and only Source as being pure or good. However, despite all this, in the past we have suggested that deciding to serve Source can be a great thing if you want to grow spiritually and help humanity. And I still maintain that position. In fact, I myself am in service to Source right now, and have been for quite a long time. Of course, serving Source is a choice. People do not have to do this. In fact, the tasks that may be asked of you when you commit to serving Source can be challenging, although you won't be asked to do things that you won't be able to. It's entirely possible that it's simply not in alignment for a certain person to serve Source at this current moment in time. I recognize that many of you already have a whole lot on your plate, emotionally and spiritually and practically speaking, and I respect that. Still, serving Source is an amazing path to walk and a very great act of service to humanity as well. Why do I speak in favor of committing to serve Source? One reason is that there are certain major and very important tasks that can only be realistically accomplished via angel, Earth-human cooperation. And practically speaking, angels are only going to actively and directly approach those humans who have committed themselves to serving Source or something similar to that, with the request to do these major acts of light work together. In the eyes of angels, it would be a violation of free will to approach someone who has not made some kind of commitment like that. For example, the being you know as Jesus pointed an earth light worker who had committed to serving Source, to a way of dealing with demons. Some time later, Archangel Michael has actively and directly approached this light worker with the request that they banish a certain important demon together that was negatively affecting Earth in a significant way. Archangel Michael would not have approached this light worker if he or she had not committed to serving Source. By now, several major demons have been banished or uncreated in this way. For example, Baal was uncreated over a year ago. The critical part that this light worker played was facing this demon and then calling on angels, so that this uncreation of Baal came about as a free will decision of an earth human. You can think of this as the earth human is giving the mandate, and the angels fulfilling the request. This way, Source's will can be made manifest through the actions of people freely choosing to serve Source, without Source ever violating someone's free will. Furthermore, this light worker has astral traveled to a cavernous region inside Earth which includes a lake of fire and where humans were being tortured by physically incarnated demons. This is the region that has created the emotional resonance and fear behind the concept of hell, although Source is not sending anyone to that place. This light worker astrally traveled there and then called on angels and other benevolent beings, and indeed this region has now been cleared. There are no more demons there, and the humans who were there have been rescued. There is another negative and dark realm that could be considered hell, which is the place you go to if you sell your soul to a demon and then transition or die. That realm is still intact. So as you can see, if people commit to serving Source, or make some kind of similar commitment, then after some period of personal work and cleansing, they may very well be actively approached by ascended masters and angels to do very significant light work together. And all of humanity is greatly benefiting from these brave individuals who are doing so. Of course, angels and ascended masters won't ask anything that the man or woman will not be able to accomplish. Not everyone who is committed to serving Source will be asked to do something like this. Another person might be asked to, for example, open a soup kitchen. So, that is one reason for serving Source. A second reason is that it will help you identify as the entire body and not just as one finger. What I mean by that is that ultimately, all is one. Yet the moment-to-moment experience of the average light worker is that they are being who is separate from everyone and everything else. Committing to serving Source will put you on the path to identifying yourself as being one with everything and not as you being one more separate being. It will help you identify as the whole body and not just as one finger. It will help you identify as your greater self. It's beneficial to humanity if people start identifying as the whole. It's beneficial for the body if the finger realizes it's one inextricable part of it. Imagine a body where every single body part or organ thought they were separate from the whole. It would be an unhealthy and dangerous and stressful situation. Moreover, it's also psychologically healthy for the individual to start realizing that they are the body and not just the finger, not as a rational thought, not once as a peak experience during meditation, but more and more as an everyday reality. Committing to serving Source won't get you there immediately, but it will put you on that path. While light workers usually aren't actively destructive, some of them have limited their awareness to only a small happy bubble around them. Now, that can be a necessary survival mechanism, and certainly that's better than just being depressed. However, shutting out the world and limiting your awareness to happy things only is not really a state of ultimate spiritual attainment, no matter how blissful or content one might feel inside their happy bubble. If we Pleiadians would limit our awareness to only a small happy bubble, we would not be out here helping you today. If you commit to serving Source, you can be reasonably sure that after a period of being invited to work on yourself, you will be asked to step up to help others. If you were previously inside a self-imposed happy bubble, you will be let out of that, at a gradual, workable, healthy pace. You will also be invited to start a process of self-healing, self-love and integration. And you will also receive lots of help with those processes along the way. A third reason for serving Source is that committing to this path will eventually integrate your ego in a healthy and proper way, so long as you commit to serving Source from the perspective that you are already valuable and loved beyond measure. It's just that the consciousness of everything has a very high vantage point, and because all is one, it makes sense to make yourself available to this consciousness of everything for tasks that can benefit the whole. While your own soul may have a much higher vantage point than most Earth humans, even your own soul doesn't have a vantage point as high as Source does. This healthy and proper integration of the ego is a massively important thing. The vast majority of people, including light workers, haven't fully and properly integrated their ego yet. There are many people out there, including some people receiving this message, who think they have integrated their ego, but in fact they have not yet fully done so. Committing to serving Source is one great way to step on the path to fully integrate your ego in a healthy way. It is not very easy or straightforward to do that in any other way. Having certain rational thoughts or insights or peak experiences can help, but that by itself this will not fully integrate your ego. Rationally knowing that all is one is an important step, but that by itself will not integrate your ego fully. To us, freely choosing to be in service does not mean that you are flawed, or bad, or lesser than. Freely choosing to be in service, to us, indicates a level of mastery and altruism and an integrated and practical understanding that all is one. Great masters, such as Archangel Michael and certain Earth human masters, are in service to Source and have said so in various messages and channelings. It is impossible to freely choose to be in service and still subconsciously hold on to certain egoic ideas, and hence the ego really doesn't like being in service. In fact, the ego will come up with all sorts of reasons and arguments against being in service to Source. An unintegrated ego is not just someone being a destructive bully to the people around them. It can also be someone staying a bit too long in their happy bubble, or it can be someone avoiding tough choices or avoiding painful healing and integration processes. It can be your minute-to-minute experience being one of separation instead of your minute-to-minute experience being one of connection with everything around you. Of course, these things will not all click into place immediately if you commit to serving Source, but you will immediately start on a path that leads to a proper integration of your ego. Hence it also benefits you personally to serve Source. A fourth reason to serve Source is that this really does very much help the liberation of Earth. You could think of Earth as a war zone, because there literally are powerful people out there who are trying to kill and control a whole lot of people. And you could think of most light workers as spec ops agents who committed to serving Source before their current life. During wartime, it's best if spec ops agents report to mission control, i.e. Source, rather than if they just act based on their own judgment. The more that spec ops agents report to mission control, the sooner Earth will be free. I do think there is a lot of value in the idea that everyone can create whatever they feel guided to do, and so a heart-centered society is built. However, I think that's more something for the rebuilding phase. Right now there is a war to be won, and for that you need people reporting to mission control, i.e. stating that they are serving Source. If everyone in the Galactic Confederation military decided that they no longer chose to serve, then our military would stop functioning immediately. Within a week we'd be invaded by reptilians, and within a month most of us would be dead or enslaved. People in the Galactic Confederation are only free because enough of us freely choose to serve Source. Yes, no one here is forced to serve in the military. However, at the same time, if no one chose to serve as a soldier, even though being a soldier is not always a lot of fun, then we would be conquered very quickly. I would love for things to be so peaceful that everyone can just do what they wish to do, and even then people would remain safe and taken care of. And maybe one day in the future, this will be a reality. Certainly there are things I could be doing that would be more fun for me than being a military commander. But in the here and now, Earth is a war zone, and to win wars it would be helpful for spec ops agents to report to mission control. You may not like that you are in a war zone, and I empathize very much with Earth humans, but until certain powerful people stop trying to kill and control on a mass scale, Earth is still a war zone. And if you are in a war zone, then it's best to acknowledge reality and act accordingly. Or if you don't like this military talk, suppose there is some kind of disaster and lots of Earth people would be homeless and hungry. Wouldn't it then make sense for people to report to one central coordination point? Then people would be helped more efficiently than if people just helped in an uncoordinated fashion. If you decide Source and your personality and talents are more geared towards helping people or taking care of people, then Source may very well guide you in that direction. Serving Source doesn't necessarily mean conflict or facing literal demons. Of course, I do acknowledge that it's relatively easy for us to talk, because we are getting our needs met and you are currently not. I am actually positively surprised by the very impressive capabilities and dedication of those Earth light workers who have already reported to Mission Control, i.e. Source. I am not complaining about or disappointed about light workers deciding to serve Source. That part of the plan is actually proceeding more quickly than we predicted, because certain light workers have stepped up to an almost unbelievable degree. The light worker I spoke about earlier is one such example. Sure, things would move even more quickly if even more light workers started serving Source, but I am grateful to and impressed by how much light workers have already stepped up. Thank you for your work and dedication, Earth light workers. You are an amazing ground crew indeed. Finally, a fifth reason is that once you embark on the path of serving Source, you will grow immensely and you will be helped by angels and ascended masters and possibly galactics. You don't need to be so-called whole to start serving Source. This channeler still had quite a lot of psychological issues and emotional turmoil when he made his commitment to serving Source. Because of that commitment, he actually got more help and encouragement and he healed more quickly, and he was only asked to start serving Source a few years later, once he had done most of his healing and integration work. If you think it is unfair that people who committed themselves to serving Source are getting a bit more help than those who did not, ask yourself, if you are Mission Control, do you send more support to those Spec Ops agents who are reporting for duty and are available for missions, or to those Spec Ops agents who are just acting on their own accord? So if you serve Source, you will be coached and helped in the direction of great personal development. After a few years of committing to Source and doing this enhanced healing and integration work, you will likely feel emotionally safe and pleasant to most other people, although occasionally you may still trigger certain people too. This channeler has committed to serving Source, and one part of the reason why many people resonate with the messages he channels is because his serve to Source has made him quite a pure conduit. Also, both spiritual people and more so-called average Earth humans have recently remarked to the channeler in real life that he feels emotionally safe to be around, and that he has a great energy. For angels and us galactics too, if we see that someone is genuinely in service to Source, we will immediately think, okay, this is a safe, sane, emotionally mature and spiritually pretty developed person. This is someone we can work with, if we want. We don't need to be on our guard or concerned if we're around this person. Of course, there absolutely are Earth humans who are not in service to Source and for whom all of this is true too. Still, if we see that someone is genuinely in service to Source, we instantly know all these things about this person. And if the person is not in service to Source, then we will have to look more carefully and closely. So, these are 5 reasons to serve Source. 1. Certain tasks can only realistically be accomplished by angels and Earth humans working together, and angels will not actively and directly approach people with requests to do light work together unless those people have committed to serving Source, or made a commitment similar to that. 2. Serving Source will help you identify as the entire body and not just as the finger. 3. Serving Source will put you on the path to a healthy integration of your ego. 4. Serving Source will help liberate Earth more quickly. 5. Serving Source will lead to great personal development, and at some point, you will start feeling emotionally safe to other people and beings. That said, as always, this is a choice. No one is forcing you to serve Source. The Galactics and I love you unconditionally and endlessly, no matter what choices you make. We are so looking forward to meeting you. Your star brother, Hakann.